Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini, here with a gyrophagic Charles Coulombe.
Gyrophagic? You mean like I travel all over the place and do whatever I want and just sort of hang out?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, that's not very nice.
Why?
Because it gives the impression that I just travel around and do stuff.
What's wrong with that?
Well,
you weren't expecting that, were you?
No, I wasn't. All right, let's try this another way.
Okay.
All right, let's see this from a whole other point of view. Let's look at this with a new, fresh set of eyes.
Okay, yeah.
All right. To call one gyrophagic implies that one is more interested in traveling about seeking one's pleasure than one is putting one's nose to the grindstone where one is, blooming where one is planted.
Ah,
You see how unjust and unfair you've been to me?
Well...
No, you don't.
No, I mean, there's an argument. There's a case to be made.
You don't basically. You're saying, all right, fine. You know what? I'll give you that. You've been through a lot since we last convened.
Yeah.
I give you that. But, and here's a big but.
Yeah.
There is something we have to say, and that is that this is our last time together before a return to Austria.
That's right.
And the split screen.
Back to the split screen, yep.
Back to the split screen. Already they're making preparations in the rest of the tower. Get ready to mothball this whole studio.
Yeah, well, that's just good housekeeping.
Good housekeeping. I mean, literally mothballing.
Yeah, literally mothballing. What?
I've never seen people mothball, so they might bring in mothballs.
You've never seen mothballs?
I've seen mothballs, but calm down. You mothball a chest, and you're going to have furs and stuff in it. And you put mothballs in it. You do not mothball a whole room by dumping mothballs in it. What is that even supposed to do? But mothballing something, I mean, you cover up the furniture, you take out or turn off whatever some of these instruments you've got all over the place. You know, maybe the books would be covered up so they wouldn't get dusty. You don't throw mothballs all over the place. Who does that?
Thorough people.
Okay. Well, is it to protect the carpet or something?
Charles, you know what? Are you really going to lecture me on cleanliness and good housekeeping?
No,
Is that really
no. I'm not going to give you a lecture on anything. I've been warned in advance. But I'm just saying. Now, there's something else one has to point out.
What?
By the time these nice people see us...
Oh, right, yeah.
It will no longer be Christmas.
What?
It will no longer be Christmas. Sunday is Candlemas. They're going to see us Monday.
Oh, okay.
We'll be gone with Christmas.
I thought you were going to mention Brexit.
Oh, I'll mention Brexit.
Yeah, but okay, yeah, bye-bye Christmas.
Bye-bye Christmas. See, we're in Christmas now.
Yeah.
But
see?
they're...
We still got the Christmas lights.
Yes,
people can see.
We have Christmas lights up.
Yeah.
It's actually, you can't see it, but it's the rest of the tower is festooned. The only thing you took down was the big Christmas tree in the lobby.
Yeah.
But everything else is still up there. I don't know. I think if I have to have another Christmas cookie from the secretarial pool, I'm probably going to die of Christmas cookie poisoning.
Probably.
Because they're still making them and bringing them in.
I love Christmas cookies.
Well, I know you do. They keep making them. Eugenia, gosh, what a name. Eugenia brought in this big pile, and she's got the green, the sugar cookie shaped like a Christmas tree with the green glitter on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's got a whole pile of those in there.
I love those. That's why she did that.
I guess. She's angry for a raise.
Who isn't?
Well, that's true, too. This is kind of a dog-eat-dog sort of business you got here. But also, I'm happy to say that except for Friday, when we had whitefish, all during the Christmas season, there hasn't been any fish in the commissary, except on Friday.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very nice. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
I've never seen Hamburger Helper presented quite that way, but still, it was a break from the fish.
Yeah.
And I've never seen Hamburger Helper. Well, it was funny. I looked I shouldn't have done this, but when I went back into the kitchen, I saw some of the boxes it comes from, and they were very old.
Yeah.
But the chefs assured me, they're not old, they're vintage. So apparently you've been buying mass supplies from a vintage food store.
I don't, I'm not, that's pretty low level stuff, Charles. I set a budget and I say meet this budget. Right? I mean, I'm not telling you, pick this, and that. That's not what I do. I have to manage my time.
So they meet the budget at the vintage food store.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't.
Well, I asked him. I said October 13th, 1992. Is that the best buy date? And he assured me that it was actually a vintage, like wine. Mm-hmm. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean.
No, that's fine. I'm not arguing.
Excellent. Good. I'm glad you like the hamburger helper.
It was just great. I had a little bit of difficulty, though, deciding if it was marinara or beef stroganoff.
Very good, Charles.
They look very similar.
Very good.
It's amazing how long a few decades will make things resemble one another.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, beyond that, I might as well say this since I'm making a physical departure. Tyrone was looking very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got a big Christmas bonus.
Yeah.
So he was happy about that. But the other members of the security staff weren't. Did you give him a big chunk that was supposed to be divided among them? Because if that was the case, I don't think he did that. I think he just held on to it. He looked real happy, and they looked really annoyed. I mean, you don't have to tell your management secrets in front of the audience, but I just think that was odd.
Well, he took advantage of an opportunity. This is a meritocracy, right? You've got to angle. You've got to use creativity, ingenuity.
Of course you do.
Innovate.
Yes.
That's how we promote innovation, Charles.
Oh, I see. Well, okay, innovation is theft. That's good to know. Anyway, what? I'm just saying. Now, the other thing, too, is that apparently, in keeping with the time, the 13th floor has not manifested for the past several weeks. So everyone's been happy about that.
Right.
They've all been using the elevator again. The meditation garden I actually got into this time. I haven't been allowed in a long time, but I was able to get in. And I thought it was interesting. I have never seen jacaranda trees in bonsai. That's really weird. I've never seen that. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting. Because usually, they're African.
Yeah.
Bonsai trees are usually Asiatic trees.
Right.
So seeing a bonsai jacaranda was just peculiar.
Just a dose of multiculturalism.
I'll say.
Yeah. So,
at any rate, I'm happy to say that, so far as I can tell, the place is pretty much the way it's always been. I'm not going to pout because I wasn't invited up to the penthouse this time. I'm not going to pout.
Good.
I'm going to say, okay, you had more important things to do, more important people to show up there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, fine. I don't care. Now, you asked about Brexit.
Yeah.
Today, in real time, ladies and gentlemen, as we sit here going over internal office gossip, the truth is that the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, comprising England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and the colonies thereof, have seceded from the European Union.
Ireland's not part of that?
No, the Republic of Ireland, the South, land of abortion and gay marriage, voted in by the little people, the little leprechauns. They all voted. And only 33%, voted against it. They were the live, human Irish. It was the wee folk, the fairies, you see, that voted for it. And one of them became Taoiseach,
Became what?
Taoiseach. That's what they call a prime minister in Gaelic. Of course, none of them can really speak Gaelic, at least none that are around the Taoiseach. They speak it in the fringes, but out there they probably didn't vote in favour of gay marriage and all that, and abortion and all the other stuff that the Taoiseach and his people wanted.
Okay.
So it's 33% of the Irish were good, and the rest, well, no better than they should be, as the old Irishman would say. But I think they were little people, leprechauns. I think that's what happened, you know. They allowed them to vote, and look what happened. They said, we vote this stuff in, it'll be the end of the human beings in Ireland, and we'll have our land back. I think it was the strategy, don't you know? That down there, if you went into the hills of Ireland, you know, where the Tuatha De Danann and the Banshee and all them hold forth, they decided that this was the way to break the rule of man over the Emerald Isle. Before you know it, they said, they'll all go over the sea to England or up to the north with the Ulster Scots, and we'll have Ireland again. I think that was the strategy.
Yeah.
However, whether it was or it wasn't, Ireland is still firmly in the EU. You know, all that Irish nationalism and independence and stuff. So there they are in the EU. Now, the problem, of course, is that themselves and the rest of the three kingdoms are bound at the hip. So how Ireland is going to settle through the next few years, nobody knows. But that's not all. Because you see, if you go out to the continent itself, there's all sorts of things a brewing. All sorts of strangenesses. For instance, in Central Europe, they've got a very different idea of what European values are compared to Western Europe, at least the leadership of Western Europe. Because the rulers of Germany and France and Spain and all that, not unlike the Taoiseach in Ireland, never saw an abortion they didn't like. Whereas it's a bit different in Central Europe. So there's, shall we say, a creative tension going on. But wait, there's more. Because you see, now that the UK are out of the EU, they are free to pursue something called Consult.
Oh, right. Yeah, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, yeah.
And the UK,
Yeah.
Consult. Now, there aren't too many fairies in there. But what there are Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, and British. And the notion is that they will establish free trade and free passage under those four countries, who incidentally share a queen. Not a fairy, but a queen.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that if that comes to pass, already Britain is the fifth largest economy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
The trading bloc that they could become is amazing. And it's such a thing that even, what's his face, Justin Bieber Trudeau, who doesn't have the brains God gave an eel, even he's figured out that it's the way forward.
Wow.
So if someone that stupid can pick up on it, you know, anybody can.
Wow. Okay.
And that's the news from the front. You heard it here first.
Okay. So is that pretty much everything you had?
Well, just don't forget Sunday. Well, it'll already have happened, but Candlemas. I love Candlemas.
Yeah.
That's about all I can say. I'm afraid we have to move on now to the hard part.
Yeah, the hard part. So for those of you who don't know, my dad died on January 9th, and that's why we've had this little hiatus on the show. So, yeah, I just thought it would be of some benefit to various people if I just reflect on some of my experiences during this hard time. Gosh, you know, I think the thing I feel right now the most is just my heart bursts with gratitude for all the people who went to the viewing, to the rosary, to the funeral mass and the funeral. It really has such a powerful impact on me. Because they're just such heroes. I mean, people who I absolutely had no expectation to come. There's this one gentleman, Arthur, who I knew this guy because I wore a Knights of Columbus shirt, and I would walk around the neighborhood, and he saw my Knights of Columbus shirt. He said, "Oh, do you know so and so?" I said, "Yeah, I know so and so." He's like, "Yeah, I work with him at JPL," and you know. So, and I would see him several times walking. I don't know if he's Catholic or not, or Christian or whatever, but he came. Mm-hmm. This person who I had just met walking, and who I chat with. I know he's a great person, but he went to the Rosary,
Yeah.
and that shocked me. That was incredible. Everybody who just liked and retweeted my prayer request when I announced my father died on Twitter and Facebook. Oh my goodness, it's just so overwhelming. People offering rosaries, plenary indulgences. It's just, it's times like this where Catholicism really is that shining city on a hill.
Yeah.
More than any other time in my life. This past month, it was incredible to see the light in people. All these nights, I've barely been a Knight of Columbus for since last May. And you've got a ton of knights showing up to the Mass and the funeral, and I had no expectation. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? They're like, this is what we do.
That's true.
This is what we do. And I was just absolutely blown away. Let's see here. Was there anything else? But yeah, that inspires me. Like, now that makes me want to be that shining light during another person's dark time. Because it's just so, it touches you so deeply. It really does.
It does. And one of the things that you wonder until you have something like this happen, like, your postman's mother dies, you find out about it, you say, sorry to hear about it. You wonder, until it's happened to you, does that really make a difference for them? It does.
Absolutely it does.
Even if it's someone that, never knew your dad or had nothing, gee, I'm sorry to hear about that. It does make a difference.
Gosh, it was, and my dad, he really loved giving people avocados and oranges.
He sure did.
Because he's really old. He grew up during the Depression in New York. So he had such it gave him such great joy to do that for people, to give them oranges.
Yeah.
And so all these people, because now I'm doing all of my dad's tasks. And so I have to meet all the vendors who he regularly dealt with. Post office, our accountant, the mechanic. And all these people are just so... They loved my dad, and they just offered such beautiful condolences. And they were so sad, too.
Yeah.
But it was just so beautiful the way my dad made a mark, even on a business relationship.
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful.
He had such a twinkling expression, your father, in his eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You won't know this, ladies and gentlemen, but Vito was actually the head here of the
shipping department.
That's the one, and he was the one who cracked the whip over the mailroom boys. But he was a big part of Tumbler House, a very quiet part. But see, the thing about Vito Franchini was that he was not one of these people who throw his weight around and make a big deal about much of anything, but he did a lot. He performed. He did stuff. And that was the way he showed his affection for his family. That was the way he did everything. He was a very unassuming man, would never talk up his accomplishments. Nothing like that. He basically let his work and his life speak for themselves.
Yeah, the two things that I want to take away from his life is he had such a strong sense of duty.
Yep.
And he never grumbled.
No.
He just did it. And he never grumbled about people, like people's faults, when people are acting up or I'm being immature or something like that. He never grumbled. Obviously he put me in line, but, he never talked it behind anyone's back because he understood human nature. But also, I think more importantly, he had a deep sense of humility.
Yeah.
I
would definitely agree with that.
So, it's been a tough time for me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to lie. So that's why. But we did want to do. I did want to do the show last week, and we were going to do the show last week. But Charles happened to be out of town in New York, so that's why we weren't able to do a show. But here we are now. But yeah, I guess my two takeaways. I guess why I want to say that is to be that shining star for people who are grieving. It makes such. It's really a hero. You'd really be a hero to that person, and when you have prayer requests on social media, do them. Do not feel that it's presumptuous. Do not feel that it's selfish.
No.
When you need prayer requests, make those prayer requests. It gave me such great joy to be able to do that for my dad in terms of, get so many prayers.
Well, it's a modern expression of the communion of saints. Union of prayer, which is a phrase that when I was young didn't mean that much to me, but the older I get, the more it does. And the other thing too, our Council of the Knights of Columbus turned out in force, as you said, and that leads me to remind people that the major work of the Knights is done at the council level, and despite whatever else may happen at corporate, at the moment anyway, and throughout its long history, it's in the councils that the order really lives.
Yeah.
All across this great country of ours, and in Canada and the Philippines and elsewhere, the Knights are slogging away, helping other people, but also helping each other. And see, that's something that you've seen is the fraternal aspect of the order. There's the insurance, which is, useful and certainly was a major reason for founding it. There's the charitable aspect, the giving to good causes and all that. But the key is the fraternal aspect. The key is the people. And that is something that should never be lost sight of by those in charge. Anyway.
Okay, yeah, so, and just personal thanks to all the Tumblr House fans. Hardly anyone grumbled that, where's the new episode? What's going on? Thank you to all the patrons for sticking with us. Hardly anyone gave up on us. So just we're so blessed for such a great community.
And for those who did, believe me, we understand, because obviously you're paying to get something.
No, of course.
We weren't in a position to deliver.
Of course.
So don't feel that for those of you who didn't, don't feel that we're upset or angry or annoyed. But for those of you who stuck by us during this very difficult time, thanks so much. I was, one of the things that was nice about the trip to New York was that I met several of our patrons and a lot of viewers whom I had not met before. And especially because of your father's death, they took great pains to tell me what good they felt that the show had done for them. And of course, that's why we do it. You've got to bear in mind that without you, we wouldn't be here. It's a symbiotic relationship. We produce this show for you, and some of you get some benefit for it, which we're grateful for. Contrary-wise, a lot of you help make it possible, which is the way things are.
Yeah.
But I was very touched on the New York trip. One thing though that made me laugh, and some of you will have maybe among those who said this to me, but I don't mind telling you. I said, you're just like you are on the show, and I thought, well, what were you expecting? I really got three heads, or?
You're supposed to glow. You're supposed to be larger than life. You're supposed to. Wow, he was great on TV, but in person, he's just spectacular.
I would be very grateful if some of you would write that into him. All right, because when the whole pay cycle comes through again, and I come under review by the HR people, messages from you saying he was spectacular. Wow, he's great on the show, but in real life. He's a giant. He's 8 foot tall.
Wow.
That would be great.
Yeah. That would be fraud.
Fraud? How is it fraud? Asking for endorsements.
You're gaming the system.
I'm not gaming the system. I'm helping the system live up to its better self.
Actually, you know what? That's true. I mean, as we were talking about, that's how we innovate.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Yeah.
Tyrone gets away with nicking everybody in the security department's Christmas bonus. That's innovation.
You're thinking smart. I like it. All right.
Somehow, on one level, I think I've won, ladies and gentlemen, but on another level, I think I've been duped. This is very strange. All right.
Right.
What do we got?
Okay, we have a lot of great questions for this episode. I'm really excited.
Okay.
So thank you for everyone who sent in questions. First question is from Brian.
Brian, all right.
Charles, what was the punishment for adultery under the Catholic states, typically?
You had to watch The View constantly. No, that's not true.
Wow.
The View wasn't invented then. No, one thing you've got to bear in mind is that, and again, there were variations and exceptions to everything, but all of the moral crimes that in our time were punished by the state, adultery, sodomy, and so forth, were actually not directly dealt with by the state. The church dealt with them and prescribed various penances and so forth. But these penances could be public. They could be exposed, an adulterer or an adulteress could be exposed to ridicule, that kind of thing. It depended on where you were and what the customs were, very wildly. And if you committed adultery with a royal personage, like the Queen or one of the princesses or something, it might very well be seen as lèse-majesté, offense to the king, which is treason, punishable by death.
Yeah.
So the answer is that there was a big mixture of ways of dealing with it, but none of them were pleasant. Now, of course, today, if you do it while you're president, you'll be acquitted. Oh, never mind. I don't want to attack President Clinton.
Well, no, nowadays we advertise on television. Ashley Madison, that I can't stand that. That's just unbelievable. That's like...
Tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. I'm going to have to sing that later.
Yeah. Okay, next question is from Covington.
Covington.
If Charles could, how would he reform or reorganize the American education system? For example, the classroom structure, curriculum, and purpose.
Shoot the teachers. No.
You can't say that. I'm going to edit that out. That's not good.
I wouldn't do it.
Okay. Well, you can't even, joke about that.
Why not?
Because...
Exactly. There's no answer for it. I would not shoot the teachers, just so you know. There. Do you feel better?
Okay.
Then I'll tell you what I would do. Firstly, I would restore religiosity to the classroom. Of course, we have a problem in that America's religion is so diverse. But I think the question of things like school prayer and Christmas pageants and all that are something that are best determined by the local community and not by the Supreme Court. That's called subsidiarity.
Well, that violates equality.
Blah, blah, blah. Equality...
You're going to subject people to and put on a pedestal one religion?
No, not necessarily. I mean, as I say, I'd give return to the communities.
You'd give return to the community?
I would return the question to the communities. Because it was the local school boards that traditionally decided those things.
Okay, so they decide on how they're going to input inequality.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like now it's done by the Supreme Court. See? And being a great believer in subsidiarity, I think a group of elderly morons at the apex of society are probably not the best people to make these decisions. Mr. Justice Anthony Kennedy comes to mind, but there have been others. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Queen of the Stardust Ballroom.
Why would you say that?
Why would I call her the Queen of the Stardust Ballroom? Oh, I don't know. It just seemed apropos. I felt like it.
Okay.
Anyway, I never mind what I say.
Well, sometimes you do.
Yeah, well. Sometimes I'm offended by what I say. But at any rate, no. But that's a very basic thing. One thing I think the Europeans are very smart about is that at an early age, they divide children, this is inequality again,
Oh.
between the academic track and the professional track.
Oh, interesting.
So that those who are going on the academic track will learn Latin and Greek in elementary school. They'll be reading the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Aeneid in high school. And by the time they get to the university, they can do real stuff with that, you know. As opposed, I'm trying to learn Latin now at almost 60.
Wow.
You have any idea what that's like?
It's difficult.
It's very difficult. I mean, keeping the conjugations and declensions together.
Yeah.
It's very tough. But, in fact, my Latin master said I was a hero for what I was trying to do. But he really did, too. That's not a joke.
Okay.
But, nevertheless, so that would be part of it. You know, in the German system, for instance, the Austrian system, traditionally they had the gymnasium for the academically bound students and the Realschule, the real school, for the technical bound students.
Okay.
And notice, you know, we have a lot of safe space seeking children running around college campuses, but we have a real dearth of people like plumbers and carpenters who can actually do stuff. You know, we have a lot of kids who have not been taught the classics. They haven't been taught history. They haven't been taught civics. They haven't been taught literature, which should be the cornerstone of an education. That's on the one hand, but they haven't been taught any useful skills either.
Yeah.
So what have they got? As our Yiddish friends would say, they've got bupkis.
That reminds me of a meme I saw on the internet. Well, it wasn't a meme as much as, it had a real point to it, but I was immediately won over. It was a brilliant one by George Carlin, where he hated the concept of sports where you either win or lose, and that's the reward. He talked about things where the reward is the thing itself. Repairing, gardening, cooking, sewing, all these other, real life skills where it's not a matter of, how great do you do it? You're learning and you're getting better.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a huge, that's a huge flaw in our society right now.
And it's something that goes all the way back to school. So probably something, you've got to do something physical for children's, physiques. But the emphasis, stop and think about it. A system where you've got teachers conniving at student athletes cheating so they can stay on the team.
Yeah.
Now that's just wrong.
Yeah.
And, look, the unholy trinity of American public education were Noah Webster, Horace Mann, and John Dewey. Noah Webster, who created our particular way of spelling English, and also was one of the creators of the religion of the country, taught that American education should separate children from England and Europe.
Yeah.
Horace Mann was something of a quasi-atheist and believed the whole point in education was ideological, to form them into citizens.
Right, good Americans.
Good Americans.
Yeah.
And then John Dewey said it was all about socialization and basically turning them into the kind of people you want them to be. There isn't anything about real hard education in any of this. So I'm afraid that were American education given over to me, you could say goodbye to Webster, Mann, and Dewey.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you can see those are basically the three tenets of our education.
They are, and as they were added to, the education got worse.
Yeah.
So, you've got, basically, what are you trying to form? What are you trying to do with children? You're trying to form them spiritually, academically, and physically. Those are the things you're trying to do with them. And that's what a reorganized educational system should do.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, questions of style, everything from the Pledge of Allegiance to school prayer, I would definitely leave in the hands of the local school board. Why? Because they are directly responsible to the parents. And never, ever, 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 ever should we lose sight of the fact that the parents are the primary educators of their children.
Yeah.
I'd get rid of sex ed for that reason.
Of course.
Because that's the province of the parents.
Yeah.
It's not the province of some morons in the state capitol whose own lives don't bear close inspection. Why in God's name would you give such creatures control over the moral formation of children? I mean, why not just send them to San Quentin to be tutored by the prisoners? Why not? I read the curriculum on ethnic studies put out by the state of California for the schools. I've never read anything so crazy in my life. Teaching the children about the intersections of empire and power and blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? That's all got to go. And the problem is, unfortunately, that system, if it is not changed and replaced and altered, will collapse with everything else.
Yeah.
Because of the products it's created. That is to say, children who know nothing, who don't think of themselves as anything. Antifa kids, basically, squaring off against Proud Boys. Now, mind you, if you give me a question of Proud Boys versus Antifa, I guess I'll have to choose the Proud Boys, but don't think I'll like it.
Yeah. It's
not my idea of a good time. But that's the position our lords and masters are going to put ourselves into in another 5, 10, 20 years, however long. You know, ladies and gentlemen, we have sown dragon's teeth in education, and we will pay for it.
Yeah. I have one pet peeve that I've had for a very, very long time, which is I always believed philosophy should be taught in high school.
No.
Because I don't believe you can realistically be an atheist without a complete and utter disdain or disregard for philosophy, because you have no metaphysics to stand on.
No.
The principles of logic will just destroy any possibility of metaphysics for an atheist.
And the importance of logic and metaphysics for the kid who's starting out, who's in high school, it's huge because he's about to enter manhood.
Yeah.
Now, also I have to say, I think far too many people go to universities. I think there are far too many universities.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just bloated out of all get out. Everybody should go to college.
No, hairdressers do not need to go to college. It's okay.
No, you go to hairdresser school, learn to dress hair, and see. Well, this goes back to what I was saying. We don't have enough plumbers. We don't have carpenters.
Yeah.
We don't have glaziers. We don't have joiners. We don't have auto mechanics. You know, one of the reasons why we have so much in the way of immigration is because these sorts of skilled jobs are no longer taught in the United States.
Yeah.
And we need people who know how to do these things. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm certainly not against people who show academic aptitude going to college. But why in God's name would you force somebody to go to college whose deepest desire is to be an auto mechanic?
Well, it's about making them feel people do that because they feel insecure, that they're dumb. You know?
Well, listen, I feel insecure that my car is basically a heathen idol that I have to pay obeisances to because I don't know the first thing about it.
Right.
And you know, my car mechanic, Cam, is a Chinese fellow, lives through the Cultural Revolution, interesting guy. He is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He's an astonishing fellow. There is nothing stupid in craftspeople. I'll tell you what is stupid, though. Stupid are the kind of administrators who have produced the sorts of universities we have. Now, they're stupid.
Yeah.
They are miraculously dumb. And, you know, they have no understanding of human nature. They have no real grasp on any real topics.
Yeah.
But they're in charge. And they do all the safe spaces and all that stuff. and they think it's so wonderful, and they turn the children given to their care. I don't say students, I say children.
Yeah, children.
Given to their care into wombats like themselves. Ooh, now who's stupider, class, you or me? You are, teacher. Not for long.
Yeah.
By the time I'm done with you, you'll be even stupider than I am. Remember, every real teacher does want his students to excel them in whatever it is.
That's true. Well, that's actually part of, that coincides with the litany of humility, which I'm big on, in terms of, because you say, you ask for basically people to become holier than you, provided that you become as holy as you should be. That's a powerful line right there in that prayer, if you really want that. Yeah, so back to my point on philosophy in high school, just one other thing why I feel it's such a tremendous deficiency that you can see in people now because of a lack of philosophy. Joseph Pieper, in his book Leisure, the Basis of Culture, which we sell on Tumblr House, it's a very good book. I highly recommend it. He talked about the importance of philosophizing in general. Because in philosophizing, you're breaking through this little box that the world wants to create for you. You're wondering about the world. How does this happen? Where does this go? There are no limits to your thought. And that is a huge defect, I feel, in young people in general, is they don't wonder about the world. They just have this small little box that's created for them. They chase the rabbit on the stick.
Yeah.
Not the rabbit, the carrot on the stick, and that's it. That's their life.
And it's not much of a life.
No.
And they think because they have access to the internet, they have access to everything they could ever want to know, which is true in a sense, but not really, because as a tool for accessing knowledge, the internet is only as good as the background you already have. You know, I mean, you could literally find out anything you want to know about on the internet.
Yeah.
But you have to know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
You have to know. You have to have some idea. In other words, the same skills that you would have needed to go into a library and do meaningful research. You need those skills on the internet.
Yeah.
But they don't teach those skills.
No.
Now, if you have them, then the internet becomes like the biggest library that ever was, where you could literally pull out anything. But if you don't have those skills, then you're kind of stuck with social media and your few favorite news things that reflect the views you already have, that are based on nothing anyway.
Yeah.
So I think we've done this to death, but there's your answer.
Yeah. Well, the people like long answers and they like long episodes. I think they'll forgive us.
Well, all right. And actually, we owe it to them after the long silence.
Yeah. All right, next question's from Neil. I've always been fascinated with the history of the Black Death.
Oh.
What were the consequences of it regarding the faith? If something like it were to happen again, do you think the faith would survive in its current state? Also, any books you could recommend would be greatly appreciated.
Well, a couple of things to say. Firstly, one of my long-standing jokes has been that I want to form the most egalitarian hereditary society ever.
Egalitarian hereditary society.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, hereditary societies are generally sort of aristocratic.
Yeah.
The Daughters of the American Revolution, the Holland Society. I mean, there are people who descend from very particular groups. Mm-hmm. And if you don't descend, you can't be a member. You know, and sometimes you've got to be the oldest son or the oldest daughter of a particular individual who was in the revolution or whatever.
Okay.
So that's most hereditary societies in the United States are like that. But this would be called the Hereditary Order of the Sons and Daughters of the Black Plague. And you would have to prove that you descend from a survivor.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? Well, so you could join the organization and you could belong to it. But the question is, how could you prove that you were a member, that your ancestors survived? because you're here.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't get it. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a joke. I mean, obviously, if you're of European descent at all,
Yeah.
you descend from a survivor of the Black Plague.
Oh, you know what? I descended from someone who didn't make it.
Yeah, all of my ancestors died in the plague.
Yeah.
No children left.
Nope.
They all died. It's hereditary in my family to have no children. For generations, we've been barren. There we've been decade after decade without a child. It's so terrible. So, yeah, all my ancestors were wiped out in the Black Plague. No one survived to bear children.
What a sad story.
Isn't it? But the plague was really horrific. It swept away, depending on where you were, 1 to 2/3, at least, of the people in the area. So this was a terrible, terrible thing. The effect it had on the church was big and long-lasting. It's responsible for the coming of low masses. Because, we used to be like the Eastern Church, where, you had to have somebody doing music, somebody chanting.
Yeah.
But the deaths of so many choirs and so many choir masters brought in the low mass. It also, to a great degree, ended whatever was left of communion in both kinds for the laity. And it also changed iconography in Europe. Because prior to the Black Death, you see the statues of the Virgin and Child throughout Europe, they're all smiling and happy.
Wow.
But the Black Death hits, and they all look very sad and woebegone. And the whole style of religious artwork changes. You have these dances of death, and these skeletons on their way to heaven or hell. I mean,
wow.
It completely changed people's outlook. Well, I mean, stop and think about it. If let's say you're living
of course. Here. I mean, of course. But I don't think people historically most people haven't made that connection.
No, but where it hit me? I was at the cloisters in New York on this trip. I don't want to boast or anything, but I went both to the Met and to the cloisters and also the Merchant House Museum in Greenwich Village. Not that I'm boasting. But the cloisters is an extraordinary place because it was put together by Rockefeller. Bits and pieces of monasteries and castles and so forth all over Europe, and transported and built into this greater whole in northern Manhattan. And it's an astonishing place. The Met is beautiful, but it's a museum, and everything is on exhibit.
Yeah.
But at the cloisters, they try to give a feel for what these things would have been like, except that they're from all over. It's very eclectic. So you have a Spanish altar with a Dutch altarpiece. These things would never have been together. My joke is that the cloisters are kind of like the Catholic Church in America, made up of bits and pieces from all over Europe.
Right, yeah.
But at any rate, it's beautiful. The effect is tremendous. I mention it because that was one of the things that hit me very hard. Every time I looked at a smiling statue, I knew it predated the Black Plague, and I looked, and sure enough. And when I see him looking scowling and woebegone, it came from after. Now, as to how this would affect the church today, well, imagine, if you will, that the Tumbler House Tower and the neighborhood around it lost 2/3 of the people here. And, every day somebody else, some other bunch of people dies. And this goes on for weeks, maybe months. And once the angel of death passes, you're left to pick up the pieces, but there are a lot fewer people. And think, too, how dependent we are mentally today on our technology. It's the difference between our ancestors and ourselves is that they didn't expect something like the plague, but they were very used to the fact that we all live on God's generosity.
Yeah.
Because they were used to things like famine.
Tuberculosis.
Yep. Diseases that popped out of nowhere. There's no antibiotics,
Yeah.
so a cold could kill you. Influenza, life you could lose. They had never lost it in such an industrial strength way.
Yeah.
But they knew that they were dependent upon God from moment to moment to survive. Well, with us, we're dependent upon science.
Mm.
If you get sick, you go to somebody. if you're endangered, you call the cops. Yeah. There's someone to take care of everything for you. If that broke down, oh, Nelly, and that fear is very deep in us. That's why the whole zombie genre is so big, because the prospect of something coming up that all of our science and all of our government are unable to deal with. What is one of the most standard items in horror and science fiction movies? It's a newscast that's literally interrupted by whatever's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the height of fear for us. Because if there's an earthquake, what do? You turn on the news. If there's any kind of a disaster, you turn on the news. That's normality for us. That's the voice of sanity and safety. As long as the news is functioning, then there's safety somewhere. And the reason why smart filmmakers have all these scenes of the news people being attacked and the screen going black is because that's our ultimate nightmare. The machine stops. We're afraid of that. We're very much afraid. We don't talk about it. We don't look at it. We don't examine it. But we have these other things that sort of, allow us to deal with those fears. Well, this is actually not just rambling. I'm getting to your question. If we had a plague like that break out now, say Ebola became easily passed on.
Yeah.
Or this coronavirus everyone's getting excited about.
Yeah.
If it got to the point to where you lost 2/3 of people in every locality, the church would actually benefit in a way, in the sense that people would doubtless focus their thoughts a great deal, because everything that they're dependent upon unconsciously would be shown up. But it would be very, very difficult. We'd lose a lot of clerics. A lot of them would die, because that always happens. When there's a plague. I remember in the Cathedral of Savannah, Georgia, there's a monument, I think, to 3 priests who were on a French ship that docked in Savannah during a yellow fever epidemic in the 1840s, or whatever it was. Well, they weren't assigned to Savannah. They were on their way somewhere else, New York or somewhere. But the ranks of priests in Savannah had been absolutely devastated, and they needed people to attend to the dying. So these 3 priests got off the boat, which they went ashore. Nobody wanted anywhere near Savannah at that moment, and they presented themselves to the bishop or the chancellor, who was still running the show, and they said, "We're here to work," and he did. And the 3 of them, they all 3 worked with the dying until they died themselves. That was the kind of heroism one got out of priests. And that would come out again. Don't kid yourself at all. You might have some who'd run away and all that, but in that kind of life and death situation, it brings out the best and the worst in people. So I guarantee you would find hero priests again, and hero nuns, because we see them now in different places where this stuff happens. There would be people who stuck by their posts, not just priests, but all sorts of people, even though it wasn't smart, and a lot of them would die, and then you'd have other people who would flee. But it would be a terrible mess, and I can't say that I would be surprised if such a thing lies in our future.
Really?
Yeah. Well, see, part of the problem is that the world is so global today. People forget that a great deal of what kept various contagion contained is that people didn't travel much.
Yeah.
But if you remember, for instance, Planet of the Apes, at the end of the first movie, not the original series that I saw, but the new one, you see this virus that kills almost everybody. Not everybody, but almost everybody. And you see how it follows the planes. It gets given to an airline pilot. And then he gets on the plane. And then you see the map.
Yeah.
Well, something like that is far from beyond the realm of possibility. Now, whether or not it will happen, who knows? I don't. But we have to presume that what has happened can happen. The other thing I should point out is that as far as the plague itself goes, because all of our ancestors had it and survived, we have a certain resistance to it, the we being European descendants, which is why even though all of our squirrels here have the plague, we don't get it.
Okay.
Otherwise we would.
Yeah.
We don't. But interestingly enough, the resistance of American Indians to it and African blacks is much less because their ancestors didn't have it. And in 1924, there was an outbreak of the plague here in Los Angeles on Clara Street. And it was almost all Mexicans who got it. Again, because they were more Indian. These people were more Indian than they were Spanish. And their ancestors had never had it, and they had no resistance to it. Mm. So there was a number of people died in that outbreak in 1924.
So they had a cure for the plague.
Oh yeah, they were able to treat it.
Yeah.
And we do have that, and we also have all sorts of inoculations against the plague.
Yeah.
And it's almost standard now.
Yeah.
So we have all kinds of reasons why that particular plague is not at the moment a threat.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they're warning us about,
it jumping from the rats to the human population because of the homeless. So the plague is making a comeback because of the homeless crisis.
As is typhus.
Right. Yeah.
And typhus. Doubtless, Mayor Garcetti and the City Council of Los Angeles, in between changing the name of Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, and all that important stuff.
Well, I read their solution to this, and so they're going to mandate that the cities do stuff, and it seems like the solution is to offer more housing. But to me, to my layman, mind, the crisis is happening because of lenient mental health laws.
Yeah.
So people, they're not going to want to go in houses.
No. And
you can't make them.
Well, out of the current laws. The thing is, you got to bear in mind that California's current homeless situation actually began under President Reagan. Because we had Governor Reagan.
Yeah.
We had a very extensive system of state madhouses, one of which was in Camarillo, which was north of the seminary. And so the joke was they'd call it the North Campus of the seminary. Mm. They'd also say the graduates of the two institutions were indistinguishable. But at any rate, Governor Reagan decided that, it would be great to save money by closing these joints. Well, it wasn't a smart idea. In the end, it's cost the state a lot more than keeping them open would have done. And of course, you see this all over the country. The system of state madhouses is closed.
Yeah.
Now, just about the only thing you do that they're good for is being used by ghost hunters on television programs.
Right.
Well, you know how it goes. Yes, we'll be exploring the horrible old moron insane asylum where the state kept these people. Well, these places were not nice, a lot of them, and they were badly run, a lot of them.
Yeah.
But if nothing else, they kept their inmates off the streets and housed.
Right.
Now, is that preferable? Some of them were just abysmal, absolutely. But the alternative, is that better?
I drive up and down Mayflower to go to work each day, and every single day there's a guy with a giant, cleaning bin with all his stuff walking up and down the street almost every single day now. I'd never seen that before. On Mayflower, right by your house.
But see, he's only one. Yeah. Now, when I'm in town, it's much bigger than the last time I was here. Yeah. They have anytime there's an underpass on the freeway, there's a village of tents.
Yeah.
And, I'll see people walking down the street. I think to myself, not homeless. Yeah. Somebody going from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Well, typhus, plague.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
By the way, American Heritage. I can't give you a book on the plague. There have been several. I can't think of any. But American Heritage, the magazine of American history, which you can access online, had a wonderful article about the plague in general, and specifically its outbreak in Los Angeles. It was called Black Plague on Clara Street. So look it up, read it, and you'll find interesting factoids about the plague, including the fact that from the time it ran rampant in Europe in the 1300s until the 19th century, the only place in the world, apparently, where it lived was in the fleas of Tibetan marmosets. So the land of the Dalai Lama was the last refuge for a long time of the Black Plague.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, next question is from Dane.
Dane, you've got your own country. How does that feel?
How do we square Mozart and his belonging to Masonic lodges? It seems Mozart was fairly devout to his faith. However, being Catholic, he was at the very least tiptoeing a line in his affiliation with Masonry, if not running across that line. On a wider note, are there tenets of Freemasonry that could possibly be held by Catholics, or is the whole ethos to be avoided?
Well, but bear in mind that before the French Revolution, the line between the faith and Freemasonry was much more porous than it is now. A man like Joseph de Maistre, who was a tremendously good Catholic, before the French Revolution had no problem in his conscience belonging to the Masonic order. And the same was true of a lot of people whom we know now were practicing Catholics. Interestingly enough, in Sweden, King Gustavus III, who would end up being murdered in 1788, but in the 1770s was that early, was not pleased with the way the Masonic order was going in Europe, took control of the Masonic lodges in Sweden. Mm-hmm. He just grabbed them, redid their ritual so that in the Swedish Rite, as it's called, to belong to it, you've got to say that Christianity is the one true religion and things like that. He was a Lutheran.
Okay.
But as a result, it is the only rite, to my knowledge, of Freemasonry where, I mean, Catholics don't join it. But if you're a member of the Swedish Rite and you convert to Catholicism, the church does not require you to quit it, which is not true of any of the others. Now, to answer the second part of your question, no, there's absolutely nothing in the Masonic ethos that has anything for us. The basic, I mean, putting aside whatever their secret doctrines are, which, you know, not being a member of the order, I don't know. Their revealed belief has destroyed us because we've all accepted it. And it is conduct over creed.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you believe as long as you're a nice person.
Yeah.
We all believe that. And we got that from the Freemasons. So that's about as much as we are. Rather than taking in anything more, we should work on getting rid of that.
Yeah.
Interestingly, though, the Freemasons have quote-unquote Christian sections. See, Masonry is not it's not like the Knights of Columbus, which is pretty monolithic. You know, you've got 4 degrees, and that's it. It's very simple, really. Masonry has different rites, different sections within the rites. They have other bodies like the Knights Templar and the Shriners and all that are connected
Knights
to them.
Templar are Masonic?
No. There's a Masonic group that are called the Knights Templar, one of whose degrees are called the Knights of Malta, but they're not connected to the Knights of Malta anymore. Their Templars are connected to our Templars.
Okay, that was scary for a second.
Well, look, I mean, if I organized a group and called it the Knights of Columbus, but it had no relationship to New Haven, you know, and our major interest was collecting models of the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria.
Okay.
You know, and then I affiliated us with Freemasonry. Well, does that make the real Knights of Columbus Masonic? No. It just means that we like some element of them. We like the symbolism. We like Columbus, and we're Masons.
Okay.
So they, but because of that, you'll often see one of the things that the Masonic Knights Templar have a mythology in which they descend from the original Knights Templar.
Yeah.
And they have Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master who was burned, is a great hero in Masonry. because he was anti-papal, well, having been executed with the authority of the Pope. And the Masonic boys group is called Demolay, after him. But no, he was not a Freemason.
Okay.
The order wasn't invented until the 17th century, and it would have been very hard for him to have done that.
Sure.
But Ambrose Bierce, in his Devil's Dictionary, has a very funny thing. He talks about Freemasonry as this ancient order that is continually getting older and older, and its roots are always going further and further back in the past.
Yeah, that's generally what happens.
Well, no, something you and I age if we just stand still.
Right.
But he basically was saying that the order gets older and older depending on who you're talking to. I mean, it's as if you were born. What year were you born in?
84.
All right, that's the year you were actually born in. But you're getting older, not by getting older, but the next time I talk to you, I was born in 70.
Oh.
And the time after that, I was born in 53.
Gosh.
And the time after that, I was born in 1890. And, you keep... So Bierce made the point that the Masonic account of their own origins always gets older and older.
I see.
It's a very funny entry. In fact, I hate to cheat.
Uh-oh.
But if I can pull this up in a second, it's very funny. It's from the Devil's Dictionary on Freemasonry. And it is so funny and biting. Of course, everything he wrote was funny and biting. It is the same book. The same book defines conservative, a statesman who prefers existing evils, as opposed to a liberal who would replace them with new ones.
Right. That's a good one.
Yeah, it is. And here it is. What do you know? I found him. This is from the Devil's Dictionary, his definition of Freemasons. An order with secret rites, grotesque ceremonies, and fantastic costumes, which, originating in the reign of Charles II among working artisans of London, has been joined successively by the dead of past centuries in unbroken retrogression, until now it embraces all generations of man on the hither side of Adam, and is drumming up distinguished recruits among the pre-creational inhabitants of chaos and formless void. The order was founded at different times by Charlemagne, Julius Caesar, Cyrus, Solomon, Zoroaster, Confucius, Thotmos, and Buddha. Its emblems and symbols have been found in the catacombs of Paris and Rome, on the walls of the Parthenon and the Chinese Great Wall, among the temples of Karnak and Palmyra, and in the Egyptian pyramids, always by a Freemason. So that's Ambrose Bierce on Freemasonry. But the truth of the matter is, as he says, it's 17th century in origin.
Okay. Shameless plug. One of the popular books on our store is Why Catholics Cannot Be Freemasons by John Salza.
What's it about?
You'll never guess. It's about why Catholics cannot be Freemasons.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, if they were to order that book and about $25 worth of other merchandise, will they get free shipping and handling?
They will get free shipping and handling. Absolutely. All orders over $25 gets free shipping and handling.
Free shipping and handling? Did I hear that right?
That's right, Charles.
$25.
Well done.
I figured it was time for... Well, you started it. You said shameless plug.
That's true.
Yeah, see?
All right.
I love doing that faux 50s commercial thing. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, we need to go back there. That's right. There needs to be more commercials like that.
I'll say.
All right. Next question is from Joshua.
Joshua.
I'm soon to be in the process of picking my patron saint, and I feel drawn to Saint Edward the Confessor. But I hear his sainthood is debatable. Could you please give your opinion on this, and possibly on the choice of patron saint? So he should abandon Saint Edward, right? Because
if I could get my hands around the throat of whoever's making him debatable, I'd let him know face to face what Saint Edward the Confessor is like. Nicer than I am. No, it's garbage. Whenever you hear that, I don't know if he's the same. Shut up. You don't know anything. Go away. Drop dead.
Well, what's the controversy?
I don't know. And I don't care. He was the king. Oh, my gee willikers. I can't believe you could have a king who was a saint. Ooh. Just... If the church has accepted a man for centuries upon centuries as a saint, as they have St. Edward the Confessor, and anybody else's little mouth comes along, or his anus, or whatever he's speaking out of, it's hard to tell today, you know. It's a terrible birth defect, you know, being born without a mouth, but two other orifice.
Yeah.
Such a person comes along, tell him to shove off. The fact of the matter is, St. Edward the Confessor is a great saint, marvelous saint. If you ever get the chance to go to Westminster Abbey, go venerate his tomb, which is there to be venerated. Of course, you have to tell somebody you want to. You know, one of the local drones and dronettes that run the place. Yeah. Tell them you want to venerate the tomb, and they will take you to it if you ask them to. If you don't, you'll get bupkis, as our Yiddish friends like to tell us. But St. Edward the Confessor was a great saint, a wonderful man. His laws, up until the Reformation, to some degree in places today, form the basis of English jurisprudence. Now, if you feel drawn toward him, that's a safe bet that you're being drawn toward him. No, it's true. Very often people fall in love with a particular saint. They think he's the greatest thing since plaid paint. And you can't help but think that it's not a one-way street. And why should it be? You know?
Wow.
They're on they have particular patrons, people they particularly like. Why shouldn't they?
That's a very nice thought.
Yeah. If you find yourself with an almost irrational attraction to a given saint, it may very well be that saint is, you know, pulling on his or her side for you. So, there you go.
Okay. Greetings. Next question is from Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Greetings, Charles and Vincent. I have just recently made a trip to Florence and was fascinated by the history of the place, particularly the Medici family. What is Charles's opinion on them? I know people have a bad opinion on the Medici popes, but were they not a greater force for good, having transformed Florence into a monarchy?
Yeah. I mean, the Medici did a lot of good for Florence. There's no doubt about it. And of course, they ended up as Grand Dukes of Tuscany. You know, they took a place that was constantly squabbling and established order. I've got no problem with the Medici.
Okay. Well, what problem do other people have with the Medicis?
Oh, that they transformed the Republic of Florence from a republic into a monarchy. And but you got to remember that republic was an oligarchy, and the Italian Republican oligarchies. I mean, they were the people who threw Dante out, for instance. You know, out of Florence. These were not. You know, the Italian city-states, when they were republics, were amongst some of the worst run in Christendom at the time, precisely because there was no appeal from the leadership. Now, mind you, none of them were republics in the sense that, all of them conceived themselves as being part of the empire. So they weren't a republic in the sense that we think of republics as. Yeah. But they had no hereditary monarch, and they tended to be very strange and peculiar places. Venice, of course, was the great example. They had something that no other country in Europe had, in Catholic Europe had, and that was the secret police, who had a wonderful name, which in English is the Lords of the Night.
Very nice.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Do you remember Amadeus?
The movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember the weird black get-up Salieri wore?
It's been a while.
Well, he had this mask and this black three-cornered hat. He was all dressed in black. That was the uniform of the Lords of the Night.
Oh, okay. Very good. I have a potentially really dumb question, but...
Not as dumb as my answer.
Are all republics, by definition, secretly oligarchies?
Well, yeah. I mean, and usually not so secretly. None of the Italian republics were secretly oligarchies at all. Um, of course, they're oligarchies. What else could they be? How else could they be?
No, I mean, but like America is like an oligarchy,
Well, yeah.
but it's like that's not publicized.
No, well, no. In fact, we pretend it's not.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, and I've said this 1,000 times before, I'll say it till I die, America, being a human society, is always governed really by a minority. And in that sense, Florence was more, under the oligarchy, was much more accountable to its people than our oligarchy are, because the Florentines knew who they were.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas we're just sort of like, well, I could vote, so that means I'm in charge. Yeah, and you voted on abortion when? Well, that was the Supreme Court, and you voted for the Supreme Court. Well, the president appointed them, and I voted for him. Well, did you? Did you really? You voted for President Nixon. Well, I mean, please.
Okay, very good. We'll close the show out with 3 questions from superfan April.
April, superfan, woo!
For her first question, Dear Charles, do you know of any miracles that have been attributed to the intercession of Blessed Emperor Karl?
I do, having just written a life of him that will be out in May. I can tell you 2. The first was in the 50s. I mean, these are the 2, there have been a lot of others, but these are the 2 miracles that were accepted by Rome for his beatification. Well, actually, the first one was for his beatification. The second has been accepted for his canonization. The first was to a Brazilian nun named Zita, which was the name of his wife.
Yeah.
And incidentally, when she found out, she said, once again, he was thinking of me. She was still alive.
Okay.
Yeah. Love is wonderful. But at any rate, she was a Brazilian nun. She had cancer, and she was dying. And she actually was very Republican-minded and hadn't wanted to pray to him. But a friend of hers said, please pray. And so she did, and she was miraculously cured.
Okay.
The second was a Protestant lady in Florida who was given a prayer card of Emperor Karl by someone who had been at the beatification. The Protestant lady's best friend was Catholic, and the best friend's daughter had been at the beatification, gave her a prayer card. And she also was afflicted with cancer and was dying. And she was cured completely, praying to Kaiser Karl for relief. And oddly enough, she converted to Catholicism afterwards.
Question about these sorts of miracles. I don't know about anybody else, but when I ask for an intercession, I'm praying to a lot of saints and to Mary. So I always wonder how they can attribute a specific miracle to an individual saint.
Well, that is difficult. That's why they don't do it that often. But in both these cases, on the one hand, the nun who knew what she was doing in terms of prayers, and on the other hand, the Protestant lady who never prayed to anybody else.
Wow. Okay. Okay, April's next question. I read that all across Europe, they have a shared repertoire of medieval ballads. How did that come about, and why are they all so moody and depressing?
Well, not all moody and depressing, but some of them are, a lot of them are. Because life is kind of moody and depressing, especially when you're living without medicine and so forth.
But that's why we have happy stories.
Like Little Red Riding Hood. But never mind. But the thing is that Europe in those days was much less divided in the sense that it is now. Or to put this another way, it wasn't divided into nation states. There were lots of little lordships and whatnot. But you had minstrels who went throughout Europe singing these ballads and picking them up, you see. And, of course, they had a great imagination. Remember, too, that the vast majority of people in those days were illiterate. And so ballads and things like that were one of the ways that they remembered stuff. You know, it's easier to remember stuff if you're singing about it than just to remember it in your head.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question for this episode.
Oy.
How does Robin Hood fit into chivalric literature? Or was that character a rebellion against it?
Well, there are disagreements, but I hold that actually Robin Hood himself was a very chivalric character because of his continuing allegiance to King Richard the Lionheart, despite the fact that all of the better sorts had gone over to the usurping Prince John. So he was a sterling example of loyalty, despite having every reason to go over to the other side. And in that sense, the Sheriff of Nottingham and the rest were really no better than robber knights. And even the robbing from the rich to give to the poor, remember that the rich that he was robbing from were people who had sided with Prince John in oppressing the king's subjects.
Who wrote Robin Hood? How did that come about?
Annie.
Annie?
Annie Anonymous.
Oh.
You know Annie.
Nice.
Robin Hood is like the King Arthur stories. Had its origin in all sorts of popular tales in a given region, and doesn't really have a literary source, although people wrote about him. And they added stories and all that sort of thing. So some people claim Robin Hood never lived, others otherwise. You know, it's a murky area. It's interesting, the University of Rochester in New York, which has the Camelot Project, which is a gathering together of all the texts they could find on King Arthur, and it's really wonderful. They have a companion Robin Hood project, which does the same thing. And they're wonderful stories. Really, really glorious stories. And then Sir Walter Scott dealt with him in Ivanhoe, where he invented the character of the knight Ivanhoe, but nevertheless sort of fitted into Robin Hood's world. Just as Chrétien de Troyes and Wolfram von Eschenbach put their Grail stories in Arthur's world.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I know Solange Hertz has a big problem with Robin Hood in terms of he's anti-authority.
Well, that's the way she read it.
He doesn't respect. And I think she called Maid Marian transgender for some reason. She had a problem with Maid Marian.
Maid Marian ends as a nun.
Well,
I think, frankly, in this area, I always hate to disagree with Solange about anything, partly because I'm afraid she'll smack me around from beyond. But I think in this particular area, she was somewhat taken in by the popular view of Robin Hood.
Right.
But if you think about Robin Hood in the context of the time,
yeah,
it's really a meditation of loyalty against all odds.
Yeah.
Because there was no chance, as people thought, of the king coming back and setting things to rights.
Yeah, I think Solange operated with a healthy skepticism of anything and everything that was popular.
Yeah.
Because, Satan is the prince of this world, so why does the world love this thing?
And I really don't blame her for that.
Yeah.
She accomplished a very valuable task with that attitude.
Yeah.
In this particular case, though, and it's strangely enough because I hate the movie, one of the stupidest films I ever saw.
Which one? With Kevin Costner? Or with Russell Crowe?
With Kevin Costner. Robin Hood, Prince of Dweebs.
Well, honestly, Charles, which Kevin Costner movie do you like? You have
Field of Dreams.
Oh, actually, okay. I stand corrected.
In fact, it's the only one I like, but there you are.
Yeah, okay, good enough.
But the thing, well, when he plays a doofus who doesn't know what he's doing, very much like himself, he's great. It's only when he pretends to be something, intelligent that he has got problems. But he was perfect for that role. I also liked him, incidentally, in The Big Chill.
Yeah, got it.
You know why?
Why?
He's dead before it begins.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and my favorite Kevin Costner up close and personal thing. The only time I ever saw him in real life.
Oh, at the Ritz?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell the story. Go ahead.
It's a perfect tale. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, back in the time of our story, about 20 or more years ago, the fabulous Ritz-Carlton, now the Langham Huntington Hotel in Pasadena, had a dress code in the bar. Oh no, people couldn't go in the bar looking like wagbags. No, they couldn't. They had to look like grown-up people. Yes. Well, Kevin Costner came in jeans and a t-shirt. And the head waiter rushes over and says, "I'm very sorry, sir. I can't seat you." And he said the special formula used by annoying people and jerks of all kinds, probably from the foundation of the world. "Do you know who I am?" And the head waiter said, "Yes, Mr. Costner, I do. But we've made no provision for denim." And so he had to turn his little rear end around, and little footlets had to go bye-byes. And when the head waiter turned around to face the inhabitants of the bar, as one, and everyone stood up.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And he just, did a little half bow with his head and went back to work.
Would would Costner have heard the applause?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
Poor little fellow. I felt so bad for him. But having said all of that, and even though Robin Hood, Prince of Dweebs is one of the worst films I know, at the very end, and this is kind of a weird parable of the stories, at the very end, Sean Connery comes up as Richard the Lionheart returning from the Crusades. And Costner, although he doesn't leave the screen, vanishes. And it's all Sean Connery as Richard the Lionheart. Well, I mention this because Richard's role in the stories is very important. He's off screen, as it were, until the very end. In some versions, he never shows up at all. But that was an important point that they did get right in the movie, was that Robin Hood's character was what he was because of his loyalty to the king. Take away Richard the Lionheart, and you take away Robin Hood's reason for being.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Okay. Any closing words for our fans?
Indeed, I do. The next time you see us, we'll be doing the old split screen thing. We'll be back to memes of production. It's kind of bittersweet leaving here right now. It was bittersweet leaving New York State a couple days ago. Although I'm looking forward to going back to Austria very much. I'm afraid I am sort of gyrophagic in that it has fallen my lot to travel and travel and travel, and to have friends and family all over the place, and never to be able to point to one place as this is my own. Not the way you are with Arcadia and the Tumbler House Tower.
Yeah.
And this is your place.
This is my realm. This is my province.
Yeah. As me, I'm just a rolling stone.
Rolling stone gathers no moss.
No, indeed, or cash. So, but seriously, folks, I am looking forward to seeing you again next week. And again, our apologies for the hiatus. But there was no way around it, no way to avoid it. Thank you again very much for the prayers for Vinny and for Vito, and for all of us here.
Vito's my dad's name, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't think we said that. I'm not sure if we said that. Oh, you did? Okay.
I did, but it's okay.
Yeah.
We can't mention it too often.
Yeah.
And just remember, those of you who have already ordered books and have them, any book you had from Tumbler House, it passed through Vito Franchini's hands.
That's actually true.
It is true. So when you pick it up and you go to read it, say a quick prayer for Vito's soul. Because you wouldn't have it if it hadn't been for him. Quite apart from, he wouldn't. I mean, I'm not going to explain how this works.
Yeah.
But without him, he wouldn't be here.
Right.
All right. Well, I
think
that's about it.
We'll see you next time. Next time we have a special show. We have invested in upgrades for the show. And we're going to get to showcase them next episode, particularly with memes of production, which will be back.
The memes are coming back, and it's going to be a great show for you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be ensconced in Schloss Tromau, Theology's Answer to Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see you then.
Remember, if it's Monday,
it's off the menu.
And the soul you save
may be your own.
God bless everyone.